finally we can discuss the fourth book in this amazing series. Oh, let me actually start up playing. We're going back to this start because of how I moved around in the apartment and the office, so it's not really feasible with the backdrop of my bookshelves yet, or anymore. So we're going back to this, and I kind of like this because it's a bit different than what you usually see, and I kind of wanted to focus more on what I have to say than what I look like anyway, so sounds like a bad excuse to be without pants. I might be without pants. So anyways, finally we can discuss this fourth book. I don't know why it's taking me so long to get to the book, but here we are. And boy oh boy, is it a good one. Like all the others, I can tell that much already. So, Blood Mirror is the fourth and penultimate book in the Lightbringer Pentology by Brent Weeks. It stands at a respectable 4.33 out of 5 on Goodreads, with almost 50,000 ratings and 2,700 reviews. That's insane, that's a lot. It came out in November 2015, and in 2016 it was nominated for Best Fantasy in the Goodreads Choice Awards. Of the pentology, it stands, well, not accounting for the one side story called Gunner's Apprentice, it actually stands literally, quite literally, in the middle, ratings wise. And what do I mean by that? Well, book 1 and 3, no sorry, 2 and 3 are both higher rated than this book. However, book 1 and 5 are ranked lower. All 5 books stands at more than 4 stars, so still pretty good. Now, let's talk about the cover. I'm not a fan of this cover. I know this is the style Brent Weeks wanted. He talked about, I think it was on the Legendarium podcast, or I found it on his website, probably on his website, that he really wanted the like hooded character on all of them as like the main feature. So, and that's basically what's going on here again. So yeah. I'm personally not a fan of it, but I can respect the matching style, and I can respect the author having a clear vision for how he wants his books to look, and I'm glad Orbit like came through and did it. So to me this is just a little boring, but it might be better if you remove this mysterious quote that just says every truth bears a legend. And I mean, that sounds like something I would have placed on the back, like just a giant, like they already have a mysterious quote, when does an empire fall? You don't need 2 mysterious hooking quotes. So I know it's supposed to be poetic, but to me it's just annoying. The other thing I would change is I would like remove the New York Best Time Seller, but of course can't do that. But I would like reduce the size of Brent Weeks and increase the size of the Blooded Mirror. Now, I know you do this, like this way here, because when you have a very well-known author, you want to promote through his name to sell books. But I just think if we do that, then I actually think the cover would be great. It's kind of growing on me. It kind of is growing quite a lot on me. I think if we just did those 2 little things, I think we would be fine. Then I think it would actually make for a quite interesting cover. Yeah. Okay, I talked myself into it. I like the idea of the cover. I just think there are some things, like small things I would change. So let's get to section 1, which will be up to chapter 12 in the book, because it's not actually a section like mixed, but yeah, let's get to it. There are quite a few storylines. There's actually the White, Teia, Garmin, Kip. Technically we have a 5th in Liv, but we're only really gonna get to talk to her at the end. So I'm shaking everything here. So, but I'm going to try to keep them separate as best as I can. So, let's start with the White, or Karris' story. Karris' story is kind of feels like a fish out of water story, and I like that, given like we're so far into the story. You should think most characters would have had their character arcs, and Karris kinda had hers, like accepting Garvin or Dazen for who he was and all that, and coming to terms with all of that shit. But now she has a son, she's the White, her husband's gone, and Kip is gone too. Like, I know she didn't like Kip, but you know, all of this shit is going on, and there's a war. So she's a fish out of water. And I think it's so good because she's the type of character who wants control, and she has none of it, but a lot of it at the same time. and I think that keeps her interesting. Now, moving on to Teia. Her story is a little more tricky at this point in the story for me to place. On one hand, I think her story is great. On the other hand, it's as if she isn't even an active character. It might change as she becomes full blackguard and merges her story with Karris, but for now she's very passive and just kind of goes along with everything. And the passive character is not bad, but then you need something to happen. Here she's just almost waiting, and I don't like that. I do like how Commander Fisk read her like an open book, and yeah, like, you know, because why she stayed back and didn't go with the mighty. I like that. I think that's a great character moment from Commander Fisk and for her. And also for all with the order like Murder Sharp and stuff like that. I'm gonna need, at this point I can't really give a judgment how I feel about it. We kind of need more. Let's move on to Gavin, and I think his story is the most boring at this point, which is the greatest surprise because he usually has a great storyline. I do love Mauritia's background as a granddaughter of the old white and how she became a slave, and actually like unironically were in love with Gavin, and it was her idea. All of that shit, I love it. It was such a great twist. It was so great seeing like Gavin connecting all the dots and realizing, oh shit, I got played, and I got played hard by an 18-year-old and an old woman. Like, damn. I love that. And actually, I had to put down the book a little to digest the entire background story. God, because it was so wild, and it kind of like it because Gavin has a lot of sex with Mauritia, but here he has like a longer inner monologue about is it okay for him to have sex with her because he's married to the woman he loves, and then he's like, but I already have had sex with her, so why? Like Karris knows, but it reframes the entire thing, and I just love that. It feels so much better and so much more real. Now let's talk about the main character, Kip, or Turtle Bear, or Kip the Lip, or Breaker. For a story so far only about being about sex, I kinda love it, and you can take that however you want. But I honestly think Tissus is somewhat in love with Kip, or at least cares deeply for him. Also him scolding Variety for suggesting he should get a room safe to have sex with was just an amazing character moment for me. The entire thing with them not being able to have sex is fine, and then Variety be like, oh, but you should just get a slave and then she can take care of your urges, and Tissus can just be there, and just so good seeing Kip be like, fuck no, I'm married to her, I'm not gonna fuck another woman, end of discussion. I think that's so good. And especially because it happens in a world where sex with slaves while being married is common. Kip is kind of rejecting this testimony, and it shows a lot about character and how serious he is, even though this is almost like a scam marriage. We also know that there are a lot of promises and oaths he's broken, so like a lot. So it makes sense for him not really wanting to do it again, because every time he has broken a promise or something, it physically hurts him. So it's great. So really, the first 12 chapters here are so fucking good. Now let's move on in our little discussion thing, whatever we can call this. Yeah, so it's the next day and these were some notes from work, but we'll be fine. So let's talk about the chapters 12 up to 38 somewhere, so let's... Can I quickly do it? Are you... a bit further. 34, oh wow. It's basically half, like, up to halfway through the book. It's a decent chunk of the book basically. So what I want to start talking about is the phrasing, my lord, and what does it mean. And in this and the previous books we've heard it more times than I dare count, but usually it doesn't mean that much, more of a formality. When Gavin is called lord, it makes sense, he's the prison. When Kip is called lord by Verity, it makes sense, she's a slave and he's married to a royal, and he himself is the son of the prison. Where the phrase takes on a new meaning is where someone equal or of higher rank started using it without being prompted to. And that's what I want to talk about here. Because Cruxer start calling Kip my lord instead of just Breaker, which signifies a huge change in their rank. And we know Cruxer thinks Kip is the Lightbringer, but now we see how deep this belief goes. Cruxer has accepted he's below Kip and is satisfied and happy with it, even though Crux has been the leader of the group since day one. So my lord isn't just a phrase used just for using it. It can actually signify how characters are supposed to be viewed and how development can happen. And this is why on page 112, let's see, it's right about here. Literally, the last two words, the final line here is my lord. Simply give the order, my lord. Which is such a powerful way of ending a chapter, ending a conversation, and it's also slightly scary. So, good on you, Weeks. That was such a powerful moment. Now, let's talk character stories. So, let's talk about Karris. So, Karris' story is now my least favorite. So, I want to talk about a few things. First and foremost, how she has a list to help with the big goals, because she's scared of failing, which is wild. Let's see if we can find it while I talk. Actually, I can't talk while looking because I have to look down at the book, so I can't look at my notes. I can't seem to quickly find it. Anyways, they're actually in the book, and it's pretty cool. Karris is one of the strongest characters in the book, and yet she's scared and nervous about administrative work. I love that. Like, she'll take on any guy in a fist fight, but she won't, without fear. But give her a piece of paper and tell her to do paperwork. I love it. I think it's great. Another thing I want to point out is how she handled the planned killing of Quentin, showing he wasn't the main one to blame, but still punishing him in a religious way that just enables her to use him, because not only does she save a technically pseudo-innocent life, I guess we can say, because he did kill someone, but it wasn't because he thought it was the right thing to do, he was just tricked, you can say. So, of course, by doing this she saves him, but he's also now in debt to her, and he's really, really smart, so that's a strong ally. I can say already right now, I wish we had more of him. It's almost as if Weeks forgot about him. I think he would have been great as someone who could work as a middleman between Teia and Karris, because it's so indebted to Karris. He would be the most safe person to follow. Oh well. And now, of course, this gave her the name the Iron White for how she handled the entire case. And it kind of reminds me of Margaret Thatcher, the Iron Lady. And I'm not just gonna say, get political about it, but I could say Karris become kind of the type of leader in her own right. Not in the political spectrum, but more on how she rules the thing. Maybe more of necessity than because that's who she is. Anyways, let's move on to Teia. So, Teia is now becoming a Blackguard, has become Blackguard. But more importantly, she's meeting Quentin and find out how Lucia died all the way in the first book. And that's something not pointed out except for in side comments, or sometimes they'll be like, oh yeah, right, Lucia was a person who died, we never found the murderer. But it's great we kinda get it concluded. And Teia showing she will be one of the best Blackguards, because she cares deeply and isn't afraid to fix her mistakes. And I love how she's finally more of an active person. By saying that she got the opportunity to kill someone, and then she was like, oh, I'm gonna kill Quentin, have them kill Quentin, because that would be a service to him. But then she realized, no wait, it's a disservice. And so she gets rid of it on her own accord. Now, the initiation was great, and Weeks does a great job adding seemingly unnecessary details to it, like how she actually has to pee, and that's nearly all she can think about. It isn't necessary to it, you can just have her describe being nervous, but it shows humanity and character. She's not used to drinking coffee, and it makes her have to pee a lot. and she only got coffee because she couldn't sleep out of nervousness. You know, so she wanted to be sure she could stay awake. It's a highly relatable thing in some ways, because we all try it, like up to exams or whatever, not being able to sleep. So, and of course her getting a, wait, where am I now? So yeah, it's like highly relatable, and it adds characterization of her, and also it adds comical moments without ruining her. And so the final thing I want to talk about with, it's noisy outside. The final thing I want to talk about with Teia is that mystical title she get. I hope we get more of it, because that's interesting, and especially because that means like she's protected religiously, but no one knows she is, so no one feels the need for her to, well, feels the need to be below her. Now, let's talk about Garvin. Garvin is an interesting case because his story is very introspective, and most of it is just like monologue and monologue and monologue and monologue on the and it's mainly on the nature of him and how he got there. And it's interesting to see how deep Weeks is ready to go to explore someone's psyche. Skipping to him breaking out "I love you," he keeps comparing himself to his brother, and how Dazen got out not knowing every trap, and Garvin does and is still slower than him. Like, all of that is insane. Like, there's so many things going on, and it's just, we get a feeling of a guy who is utterly being broken down. And then ending it with his dad waiting for him, knowing exactly what would happen, was just chef's kiss, so good. Let's talk about the final thing. Kip. We finally get to see why he might be the Lightbringer. Well, I have a feeling he is. I believe he is. And that's the storm sequence. It's so good. We get to see how he works as a person. We see, even though his character changed so much, he's still the impulsive who acts out of instincts first. But we also see the smartness of him, because he realized that if orange is out of order, that means, like, so if we take if we take this piece of leather and say it symbolizes the spectrum of light, we could say the width is wavelength, but it doesn't matter, and we say orange is in the middle. So for balance to happen, the ends have to be good. But everyone's like, oh, ultraviolet and sub-red is good. And then it's like, wait, that means it must be chi and peril. And so you can kind of connect it, because chi and peril kind of works the same but opposite. So it's kind of like a big loop in a way. But he realizes that, and that he has to locally balance the two. And I fucking love that. I think that was so good. And another thing I really loved about this sequence were how Thesis who was there and were the first to help him and save him, and not the mighty. It shows that she, even though she is the warrior, she can still be of more use than the others in the correct situations. And of course she earns a lot of respect for him. And that's... So, of course, the way Crooksor and Kip kinda like figures out their position now, with Kip being more like the prism and Crooksor being like the blackguard captain or commander. And so Kip makes the decision and Crooksor makes sure they don't die, and Kip's orders are actually being followed. Which is just, is how I would see him, because it works to their strength. Kip has a lot of good ideas. He's really fucking smart. But Crooksor is smarter when it comes to actually making decisions, like how to do things. So yeah, and also Kip has way better understanding of how the world works for being with his dad all the time. So the fight to annoy the blood robes and deny them rations were kind of great, but the scene afterwards was so much better. Kip and the mighty sharing the stories, and Kip being honest about himself and how he feels about people. I did tear up. Our little turtle bear has come so far. And like, you can feel the chemistry between them. You can feel like these are actual characters who've seen the world, who almost grew up together more or less. And I feel like the chemistry between Thesis and Kip is also improving, and this final sexy, foreplay was hilarious. And shows sex is supposed to be fun. But we also got a Kip the Lip moment. And I love because we get to see that even though, let's take, if this book is like Kip's story, like how far Kip is a character, maybe he's here, like this is the beginning, end, and we've gotten so far in his character development, we still see the seeds of the beginning where he just didn't know when to shut up. And that's great. And I want more of that. Oh, that was loud. The book's good. I want more. And let's get to section 3. I'm gonna be putting Karris and Andros together now because their stories have now merged so much. I think most of the work will be done together anyways. And I can't figure out at this point if we are actually seeing the real Andros or if he's playing with everybody including the reader. And I think we're seeing the real one and I like him a lot, but I am very much skeptical. Because on one hand I'm like, it would be so great if he was playing everybody. On the other hand I'm like, I really also just want the dude to pull a 180 and it's just been like him playing everybody and he's actually genuinely caring. Something that's interesting with their section is the talk about the idea of infinite time, but you can only be in one place / dimension for the gods they're talking about, which is a wild way of looking at it because that's not usually how you think of it. Usually you're like, oh, infinite time, I can do whatever I want. But yeah, if you take the piece of leather again, time is just going in. So your route might look something like this, like in space. So if this is getting very metaphysical, but if the book is just like space plane basically, and the string and the leather is time, then we can never do this, like bend it back. It always has to go forward, which is interesting because that means that even though you have infinite time, what you do with your time suddenly becomes very, very important, especially if you can travel through these dimensions, which they can. Now, the final thing I want to talk about is the concept of the ultimatum sent by Teia. And I think it's great because we get some great characterization from Teia and Karris about it. And especially the entire idea, like, if it's actually like a good, are they doing what is correct? And of course there's no good answer to that because the ultimatum is basically join us or die. And there is no good answer. There's no correct answer and we don't get that. We get it, we have to. They don't see any other option, and frankly I don't either, but it's not a good option. So, I'm talking about Teia. Her finally seeing why Murder Sharp is so dangerous at Peril were just wild to me. Like, damn, Peril's dangerous. I'm so glad we get, like, Teia gets to learn it properly. And I believe she is going to be one of the few who would not misuse it. Also, her mission is just batshit insane. And I'm so excited to see her fumble and recover on the fly. And she might not feel ready as a blackguard to be a fully blackguard, but I think she's ready, and I can't wait to see the chaos she will be bringing. So, talking about chaos, I love the revelation of Garvin's madness, how deep that goes, how everyone close to him and knew, like, pretended to like played along because they knew all along. What I don't like is the constant, he's dead, psych, he isn't. The fake out gets annoying over time, and I think Week's way better writer than needing to do that. But I fucking love the realization of how the world have actually perceived him. He didn't save his brother. He himself went mad and thought he saved his brother, which is such a twist. And you see the hurt in Andros, like, he was like, I knew it, and I was hoping you weren't as bad as, like, oh, so fucking good. Talk about something else really good. Let's talk about Kip. Something Weeks does really, really well is done, especially much in Kip's story, is the usage of metaphors and similes. Weeks has a very flowy way of writing, without feeling he's just throwing big words at you. He doesn't sound like a thesaurus, but he still sounds smart and writes in a flowing way. So to kind of like take Brandon Sanderson's very direct approach and then just add more flowiness to it. So kind of, I'm really happy using this. Instead of Sanderson writes more or less like this, maybe with a feel to it, he'll do like this, but it's kind of like this. Whereas if you take Tolkien or whatever, it might be more like a bunch of twist all along it. And I kind of like this style a lot. And something else I like is Kip is becoming more and more of a leader of his group, well, his army. And we get to see more of the guile in him. But we don't see the arrogant guy like Andros and Garvin, who are both very arrogant but in different ways. We see the smart part of them, who understands people and how to affect them. But he doesn't try to manipulate them against their will. Not in the same way at least, he's more manipulating towards a common goal of everybody, not just his own goal. And we see some great character moment in him when he's questioning if he's more like his dad or his granddad, because he looks up to his dad a lot. And we see the lines between cunning and brilliant is really only a matter of perception. And like, that's so good, and there's no better time we see that than shown when discussing how to avoid a huge battle. Only to realize they need the battle for new soldiers and funding. And that's not something commonly discussed, but the army needs to be paid and need food and stuff. But we also don't want to just kill people for killing them. So what do? Well, we take the tough choice, and we take the battle, and we do it the best we can, and we plan as best we can, and it's just brilliant. Now let's talk about the rest of the book, basically. Let's talk about the rest of the book. As always, starting with Karris and Andros, we are only gonna be focusing on Karris for this. I was in tears when Karris came to see the black guards who went looking for Gavin. Everyone got so emotional and all the feelings. Oh, you could cut the feelings with a knife, it was so thick. Oh, so good. And Karris learning the truth about her son and realizing the disgust she was feeling towards Simon wasn't just her being weird. He is a monster. And that gives us the true Iron White. I think it was so good learning, like, whenever Gavin had to do the freeing on every Sunday, if you should know by now, but to remind you, the freeing is basically when people break the halo and they have to be killed before they turn whites. And Gavin would do that, and it's a very religious ceremony where they talk about the deeper stuff and stuff like that. But Gavin would do that and he would just go cry and throw up. Simon would just laugh and love it. Talk about being a monster. I think it's... I hate Simon so much. I want him dead. Now, let's talk about Gavin. Learning the truth about Kip was such a great twist. It explains so much, and it's also just a great twist in general. And I don't know how much I should talk about it, but generally we get to learn what actually happened with Kip's mom and who she was, and we get to learn like how the entire Guile family tree looks, and it's a wild twist Andros is telling us. And now Gavin and Gunnar are working together? I mean, that can only be fun, because Gunnar's so fucking fun and he plays off Gavin so well. So I'm excited for the next book for that. Finally, let's talk about Liv. We haven't really heard much from her. And to be honest, she's supposed to be very smart due to her being a gardener or whatever. But she's so fucking stupid. She sets ultraviolet light locks at Kip without giving any other sign than she knows where he is. How the fuck is he supposed to know about the things she wants him about? She talked about how he failed, but so far he's winning the battles. I'm actually frustrated when I read her section. I can't wait for her to betray the White King and joining him being a fake out or whatever. That is my prediction at least. But honestly, I just want her to actually join him and die, cause she's just so dumb and annoying and acting like a brat. She had a disagreement with her dad and that led her to becoming what she is. It's so dumb. Like honestly, that's probably the worst part of the book. Now let's end it on a positive. Let's end it on Kip's story. And I could talk about Kip's brilliant plan to save the city, or how ruthlessly he made the rulers bow to him, or like how much of a guile that showed he is. I could talk about how more and more like he's Andros, but I want to talk about him and Thesis in the honeymoon suite. I think something Rick does amazing is writing believable characters, and no one shows that better than Kip and Thesis. The way they fight, say things they know is wrong and not true, but they can't help themselves, or when they pretend to play along with the other's joke just to keep the peace. Yeah, couples do that sometimes. I have done that with my girlfriend. Sometimes you say stuff you just don't mean and you still can't stop even though you know you should. Sometimes you're not able to take the breather and like take a breath and look at the big picture. And sometimes you can. That's the thing. We're humans, we make mistakes. And Wick shows it better than any other author I've ever seen, and I just love it so much. I think they have one of the most real relationships I've ever read, and I can't help but root for them. And they started marriage as a political move. I hope we get more of them bonding and they're actually a love story there. Now let's conclude on this stuff here, because this is so good. What do I say to conclude this? I mean, Weeks is one of the greatest authors ever in my opinion. The man is so good at writing both action and characters. Usually I feel like people can do one or the other, but not like perfectly both. So honestly, read his books. They're good. I need to get the final book now and see how this is ending up. Leave a like, comment and subscribe for more. I'm out.